Welcome to Introduction to Ethics, and in this episode I'm going to talk about social contract. Remember the character named Glaucon in Plato's Republic. Glaucon believed that, hypothetically, the best scenario regarding justice would be one in which you commit injustice but do not get punished in return. But this scenario would hold true for everyone. It would be advantageous for everyone to commit injustice and not get punished in return. So if everyone attempts to commit injustice, it would lead up to a chaotic situation in which we all have more to lose than to gain by committing injustice. In order to avoid this conclusion, people get involved in social contracts. And in this understanding of social contract, we see morality as a compromise agreement. The reason why we call this a compromise agreement is because people are trying to avoid certain situations. And it's the example of the chaotic situation that I was just talking about. And actually Thomas Hobbes depicts this kind of a situation in his understanding of state of nature. This is a state in which there are no laws and thus everyone is alone to protect their life and possessions. Hobbes thinks life under such circumstances would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish and short. According to this understanding of morality, moral behavior is an indirect way of seeking self-interest through agreement in order to get out of state of nature. This understanding has both advantages and disadvantages, of course. The obvious advantage is that we do not have to prove the source of objective moral truth if we see morality as an agreement among individuals, even though it's a compromise agreement. The disadvantage is that, according to this view of morality, moral behavior is a mere means to self-interest. It doesn't have any inherent worth. Something is morally right just because individuals agree that it is so. But if this is the understanding of morality that we are adhering to, then morality is not necessary for the strong, because the strong can already attain their own self-interest. They don't need to compromise. They don't need to get in this social contract. And in general, if morality is a mere agreement, a mere compromise agreement to attain self-interest, it becomes the tool of one group or class to impose its will onto other groups. Remember Nietzsche. According to Nietzsche, morality is a device of the weak to tame the strong. It's not to the advantage of strong. On the other hand, we have Rousseau and Marx, for instance. And these authors were saying that morality is a device of the rich to stop the poor from resisting. So in this understanding, morality is not to the advantage of the poor. When we come to the contemporary American philosophy literature, we see Carol Pateman and Charles Mills talking about social contract and saying that these contracts have traditionally neglected the benefits of women and blacks respectively. These contracts, according to these authors, are not to the advantage of these minority groups. So this brings us to the question, is it not possible to create a new social contract that's to the advantage of all? Because we have seen that if we see morality as a compromise agreement, it doesn't seem like it has to include everybody. The strong, according to certain authors, or the poor, according to certain others, do not have to abide by these rules that morality is imposing. So we have to look for a new type of social contract that includes everyone, and that's to the advantage of everybody. And this brings us to the idea of the prisoner's dilemma, which is one example under the general term game theory. In the prisoner's dilemma, we have two individuals who commit a crime together and they are caught. Now they are interrogated separately by the inspector, who makes them each the same offer. And this is what the inspector says to prisoner 1. If you confess the crime and prisoner 2 does not confess, you'll be set free and the other prisoner 2, will serve 15 years in prison. If you do not confess but he does, then he'll be free and you'll serve 15 years in prison. If you both confess, you'll spend 7 years in prison. In case none of you confesses, you'll each get out of prison after 1 year. So think of this imaginary situation and think of how prisoner 1 should think after this offer is made to him. If prisoner 2 doesn't confess, then I'm better off if I confess, because I'll be free instead of spending 1 year in prison. Otherwise, if prisoner 2 confesses, I'm again better off if I confess, because this time I'll serve 7 years instead of 15. So I'm better off in any case if I confess. But since both prisoners reason the same way, they end up each having 7 years in prison instead of having 1 year, which is actually better for both if neither of them were to confess. And this is a general structure of cooperation and public goods problem. A structure similar to this prisoner's dilemma is found in using public goods. Imagine there is a water shortage in the city. Imagine water as a public good in this example, and imagine that there is a water shortage in the city. The government urges that everyone limits their water consumption in their homes. If you limit your consumption but others do not, you'll suffer from the shortage's effects without benefiting from using the water. So you shouldn't limit your consumption. On the other hand, if you do not limit your consumption, but enough others do, then you will not suffer from the shortage and you will also enjoy using the water. So again, you shouldn't limit your consumption in this scenario. So in any case, the best strategy for you personally seems not to limit your consumption. But since everybody is going to think this way, we will end up with water shortage and it will be the bad result for everybody. It will not be ideal for anybody. One obvious solution to this problem is government action. Government can punish violators of the rule, like overconsumption of water, for instance, in this example. But what we are looking for are moral rules, moral norms. So our question is, can moral rules sometimes work as efficiently or even better than government action? And actually, sometimes moral sanctions like public shaming are even stronger than government fines or government actions or government punishments. So moral rules could keep up cooperation within society. And with this understanding, we should be developing our understanding of social contract. Does the idea of cooperation give us a social contract that provides enough moral rules? This is our question. Because cooperation on some issues might be in everyone's self-interest, like not getting killed, but we are interested in finding general moral rules, not only minimal rules like everybody should be avoiding from killing each other so that we live in a peaceful society. We need wider rules. And the question we are interested in, does social contract provide enough moral rules? So individuals' interests might class beyond a minimal set of rules. It's difficult to find common interests, even on crucial topics like moral rules about protecting property, for instance, or social equality of genders or races. Hence, we need to go beyond actual individuals to the hypothetical people to find out ideal moral rules resulting from an ideal social contract. Probably one of the best examples of such a hypothetical social contract is given by the American philosopher John Rawls. He wants us to imagine a situation in which a certain number of people get together to determine the moral rules of society. But none of these people know whether they themselves are male or female, white or black, rich or poor, able or disabled, etc. They are behind what Rawls calls a veil of ignorance. After they determined the rules of the society, they found out their true identities. In such a setting, no one would accept any moral rule that permits oppression of any identity. The social contract created under these circumstances would grant certain moral rights even to the person who would turn out to be the most oppressed situation in reality. And this result is reached through the idea that these representatives, these imaginary hypothetical representatives in the meeting, are seeking their self-interest. They just do not know what their self-interest will turn out to be because they are behind the veil of ignorance and they do not know which identity they will be given after the veil is raised, after the veil is taken away. Actually, these hypothetical representatives behind the veil of ignorance can determine more than moral rights, which protect people against each other. Besides the moral rights, they can also determine rules for mutual fulfillment, like the circumstances under which it's morally required to donate to charity, when and how to help elderly, how much of the social surplus to dedicate to artists and other professions, or to healthcare for that matter. Hence, this type of hypothetical social contract helps us imagine the situation of other people to find out rules that might benefit everyone. Okay, let me try to summarize what I've been saying in this episode. At the beginning, I was saying that social contract understood in terms of morality as a compromise would not meet to the advantage of everybody. Nietzsche was saying that the strong is not benefiting from such a contract. Rousseau and Marx were saying that the poor were, in a sense, deceived to agree to that contract. So we were looking for a contract in which everybody would be expecting to benefit. We used the idea of prisoner's dilemma, and hence the solution to public goods problems as an exemplary in which everybody would agree to certain norms. But these norms were very limited, and it was not obvious that these norms would cover all the moral rules that we are looking to develop. So we needed a wider range of rules, which is given by a wider social contract. In order to attain this, we needed to change our perspective from actual people and actual contracts to hypothetical people and hypothetical contracts. Rawls' hypothetical contract can give us moral norms which are beyond the minimum set of rules on which people can agree to save their lives.